We're back just talking about college football this year. We haven't really had a discussion, so here we go on this season. We've both been very busy. I've been busy doing other things on my channel, lots of shorts and Saga, college football playoff wars that just came out. Got a lot of feelings about that. One of my biggest feelings is about college football playoff. It's really about just the feel overall in college football this year. I've had Jordan on with me again. Thanks for showing up as we babble, but we really need to have a serious conversation about the state of college football. We are coming into 2026 with 4 teams that very few people would have thought is in the college football semifinals. I mean, and we had Tulane, James Madison, almost had North Texas. But let's before we talk about the playoff, let's go back to the start of the year. And who would have been your pick in the start of the year to make the semifinals?
I've been on the record on other shows as having, I can't remember who was playing each other exactly, but I know these 4 teams were in it. Clemson, don't laugh till the end. Clemson, Ohio State, Penn State, and LSU.
I do remember you saying LSU.
Yeah,
and funny though.
And here's the thing: most people, like, those were the obvious picks heading into the year. So I don't necessarily feel that dumb because, again, that's what everybody thought. And on paper, Penn State, Clemson, especially, 2 of the more disappointing teams really in college football history, considering all that they had coming back. That's who I thought was going to be in the semifinals. And just a quick note of the teams that are in it right now, these were their preseason rankings. Oregon was 7th. Miami was 10th. Let's see here. Wow. Indiana was 20th. Ole Miss was 21st.
That's some crazy numbers.
So keep in mind, and then this, I don't think this is going to happen every year. I think this is kind of a rare year for this. I could go back and compare 2024 as well while I'm at it, because I think that was a lot different. Yeah, in 2024, the semifinal was full of top 10 teams from the preseason. But with all that being said, with the way that the season went, obviously this isn't that shocking. But it is crazy to think about where these teams were, what they were thought of to be before the season, and where all of them really are now.
Yeah. Wow. So you had Penn State. A lot of people had Penn State because I think a lot of people want to see a team that has not been like dominant in the last 10 or 20 years. I mean, the truth is Penn State has absolutely not been dominant in any shape or form. Now, if you win 10 wins, you have a good football program. But 10 wins, I mean, and here's the thing. They were kind of perennial playoff people. They're fans, their school, their players. So the landscape has changed so much this year. One of the ways the landscape has changed is that we had 2 group of 5 teams in the playoff, which, people are really saying, oh, they shouldn't have been, or they need to change it again. But I say this, wasn't the original format designed so that it would allow teams to get in like that, even though they knew you're probably going to lose? Wasn't it designed like that?
I think so. Although I think in hindsight, I don't know that it's really the best move. People have been making.
Why did you think that? Why do you say it's not the best?
People have been making the March Madness comparison, and I just don't think you can do that because football and basketball are completely different sports. Upsets in basketball, because of the way that the sport is and the rules are, it's not physical enough to where just having the quote unquote best players can take over as easily. And basketball is a lot more about scheme, or I guess to put it in a cliche term, it's a lot more about the X's and O's than it is the Jimmys and Joes a lot of times in basketball, especially once you get into the NCAA tournament. So I don't know that that's really the the best way to do a playoff. I've always been a fan. We can get into this another day of the group of five having their own playoff, because I just don't think that they're really playing quote unquote the same sport as a team like a Georgia or or Indiana, Oregon, whoever we were to say. It's just not really that close in my opinion.
Well, they just put it this way though: the same James Madison that lost to Oregon, they scored 34 points, and then Texas Tech goes out and hangs a goose egg.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? So I think that the landscape across college football has changed, and this is what we're getting. And I, for one, love it because it creates. If you want chaos, this creates more chaos and more talk than anything, especially when teams like Ole Miss make it. Now, yeah, they probably take 10 times the amount of Ole Miss fans on social media and what have you to make up Georgia, Alabama. I mean, they're not even close. But the truth of the matter is, the story behind Ohio State winning last year, and pretty much they were a favorite to win the national championship up until last weekend. Vegas and everybody else has all of these ideas. And I get it that in that universe, it's important that people have some sort of prediction on that side of things. But when it comes to like just watching pure sports, and maybe the College Football Playoff Committee has some story or narrative they want to tell. I truly believe that the College Football Playoff Committee is setting things up over time to appease everyone, and you just can't do that. However, I mean, if you want to watch Group of Five, let's say there was Group of Five playoffs. I think maybe, I don't know how you do that. I really don't. I get what you're saying, but I don't ever see it being a thing.
No, I don't either. I think there will always be a seat at the table in the Group of Five. I think one thing that I would like to see, and I can expand on this if you want me to, but I think we need to see in upcoming playoff formats, because I don't think anybody wants to keep it exactly how it is right now. I think we need to see sort of an acknowledgement that there really is a difference between the Big Ten, SEC, and everybody else. And I know the SEC is doing terrible in the bowl games this year. Big Ten is doing great.
They're not even in the semifinals.
Who?
Other than
the SEC? Right.
I mean, and that is absolutely not a team. And even in the middle of the season, I always said they're probably going to lose the championship. They're probably going to lose in the first round if they even made it. And here they are, as I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
but again, well, let me just finish the point real quick. I think at most, unless I don't even know how this would even happen, because what it would require is it would require the coach of the best Group of Five team staying at that team the next year. But I don't think we're ever going to see that, because with how much jobs are changing nowadays at the big schools, that good coach is always going to be wanted by a bigger school, and they'll be able to offer him more money. And so I don't think you're going to be able to see a coach that made the playoffs as a Group of Five school stay the next season. You saw it with Boise State this year. I think their coach is the same, but it didn't really turn out great for him. Obviously, they didn't make it back. So you saw the two coaches from the Group of Five schools this year, and John Sumrall and Bob Chesney for Tulane and JMU, respectively. They took different jobs. So they're going two different places next year. I think it's UCLA for Chesney and Florida for Sumrall. So I just don't think it would ever happen. So I think going forward, to kind of put a bow on this, there needs to be just one G5 spot at maximum, and they need to be a 12th seed every single time, because I think football's the kind of sport where you could acknowledge the differences, and 99 times out of 100, it's going to play out on the field the same way.
That's well said. That transitions into the next topic, which is coaching changes and how this changes the landscape of football too, where I think you can still root for a team, but because teams are not, schools are not good at keeping a coach if they don't win. And you see this parity of good and bad between, like, Penn State decided to get rid of James Franklin. I think that was probably not the right decision for the school. against all odds, I think they probably thought they would get a different coach, to be honest with you. So let's talk about some of these coaching changes that are still kind of happening. What's crazy is the whole Michigan story. I think the internet, between every YouTuber out there, TikTok or Instagram, whatever, has beat that issue into the ground. But Kyle Whittingham is a safe move. I think that he's not going to have any drama at all. If anything, he'll bring positive to the university. But I still think no matter who's sitting there, that the recruiting is going to suffer. And we could see 3 to 5 years, because I don't think he's going to be coaching for more than 5 years. Matter of fact, if he doesn't win next season, they might find somebody else if available.
I don't know about that. I think, especially nowadays, and I hate this, especially considering what schools on the other side of it. I think because of NIL, because of how much money is openly allowed to be involved in the sport, I think teams are going to be able to move on from scandals quicker than ever. I genuinely don't think there are recruits or kids in the transfer portal thinking to themselves, yeah, Michigan's offering me $900,000 and Michigan State's offering me $700,000.
Very good point.
So I'm going to choose Michigan State because they haven't had any scandal. Like, come on. There's no, think about you yourself at 17 years old, or think about yourself in, your early, late teens, early 20s. Like, nobody is making a decision based on that. So unfortunately, I don't think it's going to end up hurting Michigan. I think Whittingham's a good coach. I do think my knee-jerk reaction is I think he's never won. He was at Utah, so it's hard to do anyway. But he's never won a championship for a reason. I feel like I don't know. We'll have to see it play out. They did announce today that Underwood's coming back to Michigan. I don't know if that's good or bad thing for them.
Right. That's a big deal because it's sustainability for Michigan amongst chaos. So a couple of the smaller school changes that I noticed is Missouri State. Missouri State had a breakout year in football overall because they were the first year up at this level, and Ryan Beard did a great job. We saw them play personally over the years in the last year or two, where you thought to yourself, they will never make it in FBS. And that shows that there's little division between FCS and FBS on the competitive level. And so he left Missouri State. Now, I have a problem with that, because if you're Missouri State, obviously they maybe Coastal Carolina had more money, and maybe Coastal Carolina has a better package for him. But I kind of see that as going downhill, but he is moving up in conferences. So that's kind of a big deal. However, in that change, they hired SMU's OC. And so Missouri State's coach is now Southern, the Mustangs head coach. And he left a good program. And SMU is no soft school. So you feel the same way on that?
That's great for them, honestly. I mean, that's fantastic.
You think it's a win?
I think I want to. Yes, I do think it's a win-win. You made one interesting point that I wanted to talk about, which I think kind of goes back to the whole Group of Five playoff thing. There is really not much difference at this point between the best FCS schools and the Group of Five schools. I think from the way I see it, that kind of strengthens the Group of Five playoff argument, where if there's not a ton of difference between the FCS and some of these Group of Five teams, should the Group of Five really be playing playoff games against Oregon? I mean, come on. I can't really back that at all.
I mean, okay, 12 teams. If you just put the top 12 teams in, you're never going to get Group of Five zone. You're never going to get them in.
And I don't think anybody, who's really complaining about that. I think the only people complaining about that are the Group of Five teams themselves. And again, I guess maybe and I mean, I have to do deep into all the financials on this. If the reward for just going to the playoff and getting crushed outweighs not having that and just doing a Group 5 playoff, I mean, again, I think it's worth it for them. I do think, again, in practice, they will always have a seat. I don't think we're ever going to see a world where they don't have at least one Group 5 spot, but I don't know.
I think, well, again, the only way that Group 5 was ever getting in was if they changed to this format. So they obviously have to change things. I did like the change in how they seed playoffs. I thought that was awesome. So, but the fifth, what boggles my mind is the fifth automatic seed. Like, okay, if you're going to make them an automatic seed with a not a bye, right? So if there were two, so the one got a bye. And I just feel like they need to, you watch Stephen A. Smith and you watch Colin Cowherd and you watch all of these people give their thoughts on how they can change it. But the truth is they really just need to change how they give the buys. The only change they need to make is the automatic buys. I would say give the top 4 ranked the automatic buys and give them a spot, right? Which is kind of the way they do it now. But if you were to take, let's say Tulane and James Madison, why don't you just make them play the number 1 and number 2? Because by giving them a bye versus the non-best teams, it gave them a chance to possibly beat a team to get to the number 1 and number 2, which they were going to get rolled by. You see what I'm saying? They played in the first round, and the top 2 teams, actually the top 4 team, got to play the next week. They should just have those play each other, knock them out. Then they could prove their point in the future that they don't belong at all. So by doing it this way, they're allowing them to stay in there and be competitive. And I don't really agree with that. But anyway, the other hire was Michigan State, Pat Fitzgerald from Northwestern. And, well, kind of from Northwestern. He was not coaching anywhere because of his lawsuit against the school, which wrongfully fired him. And Michigan State in the Big Ten has a chance to be relevant again because he is a coach's coach. He isn't somebody that is disrespected ever. If he would have coached another school somewhere else other than a Big Ten school like Northwestern, which, by the way, he revived that program on the coattails of 2 other, Gary Barnett and those other coaches. But he will bring people in, and he will be so competitive that I'm just going to call it right now and predict that Michigan State is going to be relevant again in the Big Ten. I'll let you comment on that in a second. But also Northwestern brought in Chip Kelly as their OC. And then they made another move today, or maybe it was yesterday. So what is going on here in college football? We've got Brian Hartline leaving, going to South Florida. Was that a distraction for Ohio State because he was their offensive coordinator? All these UCLA, which they don't matter, but LSU with Lane Kiffin, I mean, Billy Napier, another one. It's just, the list goes on.
Yeah, so we'll start with the Michigan State thing. The only thing that might keep Fitz from getting off to a Cignetti-like start, shall we say. One, I don't think they're going to have that easy of a schedule like Cignetti did his first year. But 2, he's not coming from another school. So he's not going to have the sort of base of players that would probably follow him to his team regardless. So he's going to have to do what Rich Rodriguez did at West Virginia this past year, which is just the entire team essentially is going to be from the portal. And I actually just pulled it up. Michigan State has 37 guys in the portal leaving their team. And then that's not even considering the guys who are going to get drafted and then the graduating seniors as well. So he has so much of the roster, pretty much the entire roster, to build through true freshmen in the portal. And it's going to be tough for him to do that in year one. So, I wouldn't put expectations too high. I do think he's a good coach. I think he will prove himself, but I think because he's not coming from another school, not going to have that base of talent like Cignetti did. I think we need to really temper our expectations here. On the Northwestern side of things, I texted you when they hired Chip Kelly. I'm like, I couldn't believe
I have not heard that.
I couldn't believe they did it. And then they hired Neuheisel, the UCLA guy. It was who went viral in the middle of the season for essentially being the head. I mean, he wasn't technically the head coach; he was the offensive coordinator, but he was basically the head coach. They got him as their quarterbacks coach. And so, I mean, a lot of people would consider that like one of the better, two of the better staff additions to the offseason, especially with Chip Kelly. I'm not really sure if he had I have to look it up, but like a connection to David Braun or whatever the connection is there. Same with Neuheisel. But that's big news for Northwestern. I haven't seen. I can pull it up real quick if there's gotten any good offensive transfers yet.
Basically, Neuheisel, he basically kept UCLA afloat.
Yeah, I haven't seen. Doesn't look like they have too many. They haven't gotten done the transfers yet, but I mean, that's a lot of honest.
It comes down to money. Is that Northwestern has billions of dollars to be able to give their players and stay relevant in the coaching world.
Yeah.
No, but those are didn't pay Pat Fitzgerald $300 million or whatever the settlement was, and they can still build $1 billion stadium. So they don't have money.
And they don't have. I do see Saka, their good defensive end. He is transferring out, so that's going to be a big piece to replace. But obviously the transfer portal window just opened, so obviously we still have a long way to go, and we'll see if the hiring of Kelly and Neuheisel gets them a couple extra good offensive players, which I think would make them a very interesting team heading into 2026, just based on, again, how competitive they were this year. I think they surprised a lot of people by not only going 6-6 and then crushing Central Michigan, but again, how they looked in games against the Michigans of the world and other teams like that. So I would say that's a good. They're in a good place right now, all things considered.
They are, and I'm impressed with them. James Franklin.
Real quick, are we getting a new stadium this year? Will that be done for the upcoming season?
It says ahead of schedule, actually.
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah,
that'll be super cool.
Yeah, it's going to be. I've been online. It looks like that they're going to do at least one game day there, and they better do it early in the season because they could have a really bad year potentially. Let's talk about James Franklin for a second. What do you think is going to happen over there at West Virginia? I'm sorry, Virginia Tech.
I think it was proportionally, again, from where the program was to the type of coach they just hired, the best hire of the offseason. I think Franklin is going to kill it at Virginia Tech. You talked earlier about how you didn't think it was the right move, but you said earlier you didn't think it was the right move for Penn State.
It was the right move for Penn State. I still don't think that.
And I think part of that, and where it's coming from for you, if I were to guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they were winning 10 games a year. You know what I mean? Until this year, right? And it's not like they had a bad team. I think that roster had, looking back on it, and it's easy to say now, that roster had a lot of guys who were playing because they were seniors, particularly that quarterback.
Well, is that really his choice? Honestly, yeah, you could. You could have sat Drew Allar, but the truth of the matter is, when you have a team, it's not entirely the coach's fault. I will say that winning a game is 75% the coach, 25% players. Yeah, obviously, he has a bad year. There are very few coaches that don't go through bad years. So to let go of somebody for $65 million, to cut in the paycheck to say, see you later, and I get it, that's probably chump change in the grand scheme of the university money, but I still believe that James Franklin is probably the best coach that they could have picked had they been a coach. When you do the coaching carousel, you have to say to yourself, if I'm going to fire this person, I got to get somebody better. And that's where I stopped with that conversation, because who's better than James Franklin at Penn State? Well, it's yet to see, but that's the risk they're taking. So,
Oh, I agree. And again, back to your point, I think Virginia Tech is going to be pretty solid. I think Franklin's going to do a really, really good job at it. So, although we'll have to wait and see, but he's killing it in the portal. I think for him, Virginia Tech, think about how they're one of those teams that, 25, 30 years ago, were seen as probably a top 10, 15 program in the sport. They have fallen off to an unbelievably low degree, but I saw a clip. It was late in the season. I think they were out of bowl game contention, and those fans still show up, man. That is a place that really freaking cares about their football, and I think it's also a good thing too because he's not going Pennsylvania is not that far from Virginia. It's like one state away. So he's probably already got a base of recruits in that area who already know him. Exactly. So maybe they were thinking about going to Penn State, and then instead they just fall under Virginia Tech instead. And we've already seen some players do that. So yeah, I think he's going to have them in a good spot pretty quickly. Now again, winning the ACC spot, maybe not, but I think they'll definitely make a bowl game. And I think they might pay somebody off depending on who's on their schedule next year.
Maybe Virginia Tech can have a 10-win season again. If he can get 10 wins or even 9 wins and be relevant, that would be fun. So let's talk about players who failed this year. And there's a small list of players, but when you look at who was Heisman, who could have been, Jeremiah Love, and Nico, I never say his name right, Alamilewa or whatever, UCLA. Arch Manning Arch Manning's my number one player who didn't succeed in any way. In other words, say what? Is that Arch Manning was so touted with Texas that it was almost going against him because he played a few games last year and then he just crumbles this year. Now, is 8 or 9 wins or 10 wins, any of those, is that crumbling? And the answer is yes. In Texas's situation, Arch Manning did not play well. He was not good. Midway through the season, people are like, hey, Texas, because they lose and lose and lose. So Texas is the worst story. Arch Manning's the worst story. You get fired the coach. What do you do to fix Texas? You got into the ACC. You're laying in the bed. You made that bed. You wanted to be in the SEC. A&M and Texas Tech are better than you.
I think one thing that is going to be a key in college football for as long as the transfer portal remains a thing, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Core experience at the quarterback position is as vital as it's ever been, because if you don't have it, there's a good chance the good team you're playing probably does. And I unfortunately had to watch it with Ohio State. I thought Julius Sand looked not unprepared, but he looks like the moment was too big for him a couple different times, missing guys that were wide open down the field and making the wrong throws. You saw that with Arch too. I just looked. And I've never, 100%, because you haven't been in that situation before, and Arch had it before this season. And I think back to, of course, Ohio State played Texas the first week of the year, so all summer long I kept hearing about, Arch is the best quarterback prospect I've seen. He's the highest rated recruit. And that's all we ever heard about. And he came in, looked like it was the first time he had played football. And so
it kind of was, to be honest with you.
In a way, exactly. And it was against Ohio State, who had a really, really good defense. So, but that game kind of ruined him in a way. He didn't really get back to looking, even playing serviceable football until very late in the season. And he eventually did get there. He finished on a high note. They beat Texas A&M, and then they beat Michigan. They scored 41 points in the bowl game. So, he ended on a high year. Again, really, I guess the only thing you could say is momentum into the next season, but Lord knows if that really even means anything. Nebraska has had momentum going into the season for the last 30 years. So, so it probably doesn't mean anything. And he's going to have to come out next year and show it. And of course, they play Ohio State again next year. This time they're going to get him at home, but we're going to know very, very quickly how much development Arch Manning, and then of course, like I was saying, how much those two guys have developed, because both of those guys looked way in over their head in that first game, and again, they both developed, they both got better, but clearly this offseason is going to be big for both of them.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about upcoming games. We have Ole Miss versus Miami, and I see Miami winning that. I don't think, because they're on a hot streak, I don't see Ole Miss having a game where they beat the momentum Miami has coming into this game. You just beat Ohio State. And thank goodness that, whoever doesn't have to play Indiana, that they get a chance to get into the championship. So either team, I think, is deserving. When you move to the other side of the bracket and you have Oregon versus Indiana, what I believe is going to happen is that Indiana has been riding the waves, and I believe that Oregon has the opportunity. I'm not saying they're going to win, but they have the opportunity to play the dark horse, because I'm in my book, and I think, and I watch a ton of stuff on TV. No one believes Oregon was better than anybody else, and here they are with a loss going into the college football playoff, winning, and they have 2 more games to go. It can be done by Oregon. Dan Lanning is, and we've talked about this several times, if there is a coach that can coach somebody to the championship, it's Dan Lanning. And he's been there before. He knows how to prep his players. Cignetti has been there before too, in the FCS side of things. But really, I think, because last year's playoff show up was just pathetic for Indiana. But really, I think this is 2 teams that have the equal momentum, equal opportunity. And the one team that's the underdog, just like Miami versus Ohio State, they weren't deserving of the playoffs in so many people's minds. Miami wasn't. And what do? That feeds the bear. That feeds the tiger. That goes into this attitude of, we got nothing to lose. We're going to win. I think Oregon can. I really do. Even though Indiana is the best team, I think Oregon has the ability to just go out there and beat Indiana.
So you're picking Oregon.
I'm picking Oregon to win only because of that, because to me, it's 50-50. I don't care that people are saying Indiana's going to roll. I don't care at all. What I think is going to happen is going to be a great game, and it's going to come down to a touchdown or a field goal. Matter of fact, I'm going to have the line right now.
I think both of these games are going to be phenomenal, kind of like last year's semifinals were. Boy, do I miss that. Miami, Ole Miss. Here's the thing. If I knew Ole Miss was going to have a coaching staff, I would pick them to win the game. Unfortunately, we don't know what's going on there. I don't know if you've heard, maybe you've heard whispers, but of course, with Lane taking a lot of those guys with him to LSU, let me look at this. Look this up real quick so we get a real-time update. I don't even know if these guys have been preparing for this game. I know Pete Golding has, obviously, the defensive coordinator, or who's now the head coach, but I don't really know like what's going. I don't know.
The line is Indiana by 3. So
I'm talking about Miami Ole Miss.
I know. Well, the line there is,
it's Miami 3.5 right now.
They're all 3.5. They're all 1 score. So yeah, should be set up. And then Vegas is wrong, but they're not wrong a lot.
It looks like one of the few guys that Ole Miss is going to keep is their offensive coordinator, Charlie Weiss, which is big. So you know what? All right, you know what? I was going to say, man,
offensive players for the motor of the team.
Yes. Having him, and of course, Golden was the defensive coordinator, and now he's the head coach. So they're always going to have him too. We already saw them prepare and beat Tulane, and then, of course, they beat Georgia, which was an awesome game, by the way. I mean, Shane Bliss, quarterback for Ole Miss, unbelievable. Having Weiss, I think, was the key tipping point for me. So, you know what? I actually am going to pick Ole Miss to win the game. I think they are. I think with that doesn't enough for me. That it really, really does. If they can beat Georgia, I think they can absolutely beat anybody. So yeah, give me freaking Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to go to the championship game where they will play Indiana. I said heading into the playoffs that I thought Oregon was going to get Indiana on the revenge trip. I don't think Indiana's beatable this year. I just don't. I think the team that was closest to doing it was, of course, Ohio State. Still should have won. Anyway, won't revisit that. Still mad about that because we definitely should have won that game. But I don't think Oregon, as impressive as their defensive performance was against Texas Tech, Indiana is just bringing a whole new set of problems for them. They're so great on the offensive and defensive lines. I've never seen Alabama get just demolished in every phase of a game like that. Well, I guess unless it was the SEC championship against Georgia, I guess. We should have seen that coming. Well, that was part of we talked about the fact that Bama was ranked number 9 was always a disgrace. I mean, they should not have played. Well, that being said,
What's their
but that being said, but they destroyed them. And Texas Tech was very much kind of the shaky team offensively. I was way more impressed with Indiana. I still think Oregon's great. I think Oregon, there's definitely a chance they can still win this game. I'm definitely not counting them out by any stretch. But I'm going to pick Indiana. I just, the magic they have going right now, I don't think Oregon is the team that would be able to do it.
Okay, so one more thing about the current situation. When you look at Notre Dame, okay, there was zero talk this year of Notre Dame being good, even though they weren't terrible. They just discontinued their rivalry with USC. And the reason they said it was going to happen was because they didn't want to have games early on where one loss or 2 losses keeps you away from getting into the playoffs. What is Notre Dame going to have to do to fix that problem? My answer, and I think a lot of people's answer, is stop being independent. Because no matter where they go, I mean, even if, let's say Notre Dame was in a non-power, right? First of all, they're not going to do that. So they would have already done it. They do what they want to do. They're out here in this world, and the college football is out here in this world, the NCAA, and they're part of it. Don't you have to play teams like USC if you're independent to get into the playoffs? And who are they going to play? I get what's going to happen is they're going to play a bunch of non-competitive teams, and they're going to be ranked really low, and they might sneak in. But the problem is that as long as they keep the buy-in, automatic conference champion bye, that's the NCAA snubbing Notre Dame. They need to fix that problem first. That's my answer.
Yeah, it's simple. Notre Dame needs to stop being on their high horse and join conference. But that's too much.
Every other sport in this school, every other sport.
That's too much to ask. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and this guy I was talking to went on a rant about how soft Notre Dame is, how they're halting college football from having even more, juice. And imagine if they were in, regionally, it makes more sense for them to be in the Big Ten, but they play a lot of ACC schools, so it makes most sense, I guess, to have them be in the ACC. Like, imagine if they were. I mean, it would be so much more entertaining. We'd have, games we could look forward to every single year. Like, this upcoming schedule this year is just ridiculous. Their toughest game is probably going to be Miami, which they're getting at home. Okay. Outside of that, it's like no other game jumps off the page. And they go to BYU. Lord knows what BYU is going to be next year. They weren't really that good this year. They did play all right, but I don't think they were all that crazy. So it's a BS schedule. They get to pick a lot of like the lower level power schools like Purdue and North Carolina and Syracuse and these different games. They're just kind of murdering.
But well, you think so? But Notre Dame last year lost to NIU and made the college football playoff, and it didn't make a difference. So even if they lose to these teams, it probably won't make a difference. Well, all right. Well, I've college football myself out. I got a little quiz. So let's remember back to last year. So,
Okay.
without using AI or anything, can you answer these questions? So, who was the 2024 Heisman Trophy winner in college?
Travis Hunter.
That's correct. Ohio State beat Notre Dame for the national title, but do you remember the score?
34-23.
Wow.
Because Jaden Fielding actually made a field goal for once. Oh my God. Quick side note, by the way, this is verifiably true. He, in postseason games, I think he's only kicking like 55% on field goals in his career, which is outrageous. And the fact that Ryan Day kept this guy as our kicker is an absolute disgrace. Like, people were talking all last offseason about how we need to get a new kicker. And I saw Ohio State fans were posting clips of other kickers that were in the portal, like, we need to get this guy, we need to get, and it never. So anyway,
as a fan,
continue.
Who was the ACC champion last year?
Clemson.
That is correct. Who led the season in passing yards
Last year?
Correct. You might not get this one. 3, 2.
Can I get a conference?
What do you like phone a friend?
I'm asking, can I get what conference the guy was in?
So I will give you
This is Cam Ward.
incorrect.
No, Kyle McCord.
Correct.
Yes, I should have known that because which is not. By the way, that is not. That's not a burn at all. Like, that sucks. Syracuse. Okay, and we won the national championship without it. So please stop.
One thing, of the Power Four conferences, which team had the worst record? Was it Florida State, Mississippi State, Purdue, or Oklahoma State?
Didn't Oklahoma State go 1-11?
I'll be answering any questions.
I think it was Oklahoma State. They went 1-11, right?
No, Purdue only won one game last year, and
It was Purdue. Okay.
at
I couldn't remember. Yes, I couldn't remember who it was. Yeah.
last year's Big 12 champion.
Arizona State.
Correct. And that was the big news.
They were picked to finish last in the preseason bowl, and they ended up winning the conference.
Last year's Big 10 champion. Not trying to rub it in.
Oregon.
Correct.
Wow. You talking about last year? I had nothing against you from last year.
So here's
You know how that ended.
right, but here's a good one for you. How many teams did Ohio State beat that ended up in the AP top 10?
Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame.
Like the final AP top 10.
Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Oregon.
Big,
The only question would be Tennessee.
correct? That's one.
But do they end up in the top 10?
Yeah.
Okay, so 5.
Well, the answer is 6. Notre Dame, obviously. Oregon,
I said,
Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, and
am I forgetting his name?
Indiana.
Oh, Indiana. That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot because they were number 10. When they lost to Notre Dame, they were ranked like 10th. So I didn't know if okay.
Last year's
But I actually know. But the only reason they were 10th was because the conference champions got seeded higher than them. So they were actually, I think, like 8. So it makes more sense. Okay. That makes sense.
Coach of the year last year.
Signetti.
Correct.
Yeah.
SEC champion last year.
Georgia.
Okay. I was gonna say, give me last year. Well, you know what? I was gonna say, give me last year's 12 teams in playoffs, but last question. Okay, we get into questions that you may not know. Who won the Sun Belt Championship last year, and why is this relevant? I have a fact for you.
It was it James Madison?
It was Marshall, actually. Marshall was.
Oh, that's right. Yes, Marshall. Yeah.
Marshall was the winner. James Madison But because that they had to win in order to really make that right. But
Right.
Marshall led, I believe, this fact, the number of players who transferred out last year, and that was 70.
Wow.
Yeah. So you talk about transfers earlier, but yeah. Mountain West, obviously, Boise State, we all know that. And now, who was the only team to beat Notre Dame last season?
Well, you said it
I
earlier.
already talked about it, right?
Northern Illinois.
Right.
In Ohio State.
Right. So, who was the only team that was the number one in the college football playoff rankings? The only team that was ever at number one in the college football playoff ranking.
Yeah, it was Oregon because they'd beat Ohio State in the middle of the season. So I think that shot. I can't remember if that immediately shot them up to number one or if it changed. But yeah, they were number one until they lost to Ohio State.
And so when you think about that, though, that brings up a good point that you're looking at a coach and a program that is a perennial. Like the only team that is in there that's of any blue blood whatsoever is Oregon. So my pick for the champion was Oregon. And I stand by that. And I will come back to this episode and I will just tell the world. I don't do a lot of sports betting really ever. I used to, but at this point it's kind of whatever. So you're picking Indiana. I'm picking Oregon. So obviously you're not picking Ole Miss or Miami to win that. I think that if Miami wins and Miami, Oregon is what I want to see in the championship. And you want to obviously see the opposite. You want to see Indiana. When we did
Yes. Oh, 100%. Yes. And I want Indiana. Yeah. I want Indiana to win in that case. Yeah.
There can't be any different like that's any different scenario that's probably going to happen. So anyway, have a good one. We'll see you back. Make sure you get out there and watch the games so that we can talk about what craziness happened.